Hello students, welcome to today's session. In today's session we are going to discuss the topic called as events and event handling. So what is an event? Event is nothing but any certain activity. So any activity or action that you perform on the browser is considered as an event. Okay, say for example, if you click right click or if you left click on your mouse or when you press any key on the keyboard, those things will generate an event. Okay, so when an event has occurred, the browser or the JavaScript can respond by executing some set of statements. So when any set of statements has to be executed based on the event, those type of programming will consider it as event driven programming. So what is event driven programming is when you try to perform any event or any action, that particular action will be provided with a response with the help of JavaScript code. So that is nothing but event driven program. So I'll give you a simple example. Say I have a program here. Here I have, I'll name it as events. Okay. Now I have given the title as events and I have a JavaScript and I have a function called as events function. Now in events function I have a message called as alerts. Alert message, as you know, it is going to just give you a alert message, some message it is going to give saying that hi. And in the body section I have input, type as button and name as click, value I have given as click, and you can see there is a function called as on click. So what does this on click is? On click is nothing but it is an event. When you click with the help of the mouse, it is going to generate an event. So that event is going to call this particular method called as, or this particular function called as events. So when you click on this button by name click, it is going to generate a event called as on click. So when this event has generated, so it is going to call this function called as events. So and it is going to display this message called as alert. Now when you consider this concept, it is convenient. That is, so the conventional programming is not event driven programming. For example, if you are writing a C program or a C++ program or Java program, those programs are not event driven programming. You're going to just start executing, it is going to execute line by line, each and every line will be executed. So that is not the case with these kind of programs. You can also consider your VB, that is Visual Basic, what you have studied, which is a event driven programming based on uh, the action or the input given by the user, the program is going to respond. Okay, so event driven programming, so it has the program that is executed based on, that is not completely unpredictable times. Okay, so what does that mean is in event driven programming, parts of the program are executed at completely unpredictable times, often triggered by users interaction. So based on the user interaction, it is going to trigger the, it is going to call the function. That is the basic meaning of event driven programming. So an event is nothing but it is a notification that says that that is something has occurred, something specific has occurred on the browser, like user has created some action like mouse click or any key press or any kind of events like say scrolling, scroll up, or switching from one browser to other browser or closing the browser. All those things are the events. Now, so what is event handler? Event handler is nothing but, so is a script, or it is nothing but it is a set of programs, okay, set of code that is implicitly executed in response to the event. So when based on the event that has occurred, some inbuilt functions will be there. Like when I click, it is going to call on click. When I press a key, it is going to call key press, key down, key up. So these things we have also studied in applets. Okay. So then same methods what we have is nothing but event handlers. So those methods will be executed automatically. So if you want to change the way it executes, and if you want to execute a other set of statements while an event occurs, in that case those set of statements has to be written in the JavaScript. Okay, if you observe here, I have written a program where I have once on click happens. Once there is a click, it is going to call this method called as events. If I have not written this, it is not going to call this function called as events. Similarly, if you want to execute some set of statements based on the action, based on the activity, that can be written with the help of JavaScript code. One of the most common uses of event handling is to check simple errors and omission of user input. Say for example, what is the use of this? As we have discussed in the beginning of this topic called as JavaScript. JavaScript is a client-side scripting language. Client-side scripting languages, before sending the information from the client system to the server, so we need to check the information in the client system itself. To check this information in the client system itself, we'll be using this type of scripting language. So in the previous class, I have gave you an example called as to check the or to validate the email. So in the sense, if before logging into email in your computer itself, we are going to check whether the email that you have given contains @.com. All those things will be checked. If it is not correct, there is no need of sending that information to the server. Okay, so that is why. So these kind of error checking information or simple things can be done in the client side scripting itself. For that, we will be using JavaScript. So again, so because events in the events are JavaScript objects, so their names are case sensitive. Okay, names whatever you are going to give for objects are always in lowercase and they are always case sensitive. So events are created by activities associated with HTML. So as we discussed, events are generated by users action and which are associated with the elements that you add in the HTML. If you observe, this input tag is a HTML element, and for this HTML element, on click is an event. Okay, for that event, we are going to call the function called as events, which is event handler for this particular function or event called as on click. So we have listed some set of events here. You can see blur, change, click. So for blur in the sense, you'll have something. If you can see the mouse cursor here, I have pointed on draw. Once I click highlight, this draw what I have selected has lost its focus. I have moved from draw to highlight. Once I do that, so that change what we have done is called as blur. And changes when you are using drop down box or when you are using a radio button. In that case, when you try to change the value from one value to other value, then we'll call it as change event. Click, as you know, mouse click, double click, focus, key down, key press, key up, load. Load is related to the body tag of the HTML. Whenever, as we know, whatever content that has to be displayed on the browser will be or should be written in body tag. So once body tag has loaded onto the browser, we are going to call a method called as onload, or it is going to generate an event called as onload. Similarly, you have mouse down, mouse move, mouse out, mouse over, mouse up, on reset, select, submit, and on unload. So these are the functions that are basically which are very important, which are the events that you see in all the elements of your HTML tag. Now I have written a simple example program here. We'll try to execute this program. Once I click on this button, you can see I got a message called as hi. Now, so this is the button. Once I click there, it has generated an event called as on click, and that on click event is called this method called as events. So which is displaying a message which is hi, so which is written in the alert message. Okay, so this is how the events will be handled using JavaScript. So this is one program regarding how to handle the events in the JavaScript. We can also handle other kind of events. For example, we have discussed about onload, and I've given an example only for on click. Okay, only on click we have discussed. Similarly, we have on double click, on focus, on key down, everything. So these events are not applicable for all the elements. Okay, for example, on key down I cannot use it for button. Okay, so in the sense button cannot have key press. I cannot press anything on the button. On the text box I can use that. On the text box I can press the key, I can release the key. All those things can be done when you are using a text box. The same thing cannot be done with the button. Okay, because that is a different element. So that we have listed out here some which event can be used in which tag. So on blur can be used with these tags like anchor tag, button, input box, text box, I mean text area, and select. Select is like your drop down box. Next, on change. On change can be used on input type, any input type, and we have text area, select, on click. On click can be used on anchor tag as well as input tag. Similarly, double click, focus, key press, key down, key press, key up. So all those different types of events can be used on these set of elements that is present in the HTML. Okay, mouse move can be used on most of the elements: mouse down, mouse out, mouse over, mouse up, all those things. Okay, and again coming for on reset can be used on form, on select on input button on text area, on submit it will be used on form, on unload it will be used on body tag. So you can see some of the examples here. I have input type is mentioned as button, and on click it is going to call, and it is going to display just a message saying that alert. If you want to call a function, then we are going to mention that function name here. Okay, so it has mentioned the function name. So other way of calling is document dot get element by id my button dot on click. So there are three ways of calling a, if you want to give just a message, then I can directly write alert. If you want to call a function, then I can call that function by function name. And the same thing can also be done directly with the help of that particular element's property called as on click, which is written in JavaScript. Okay, so we'll see one example for that. So here, so for body tag I can have onload. So onload is a, I'll mention it as events. Now I'll remove on click from the text box, I mean say command button. Now if I save it and if I try to come back to the browser, and I'll refresh the form. So once I refresh, as I refresh I can see the script is called. So that is on load. When it loads, it is going to display hi. So that is, it has called that method called as events. Okay, so these are some of the examples how you can call the method in the JavaScript with the help of events. Okay, now similarly, so there was one more method where by using the property of JavaScript. How that is done? For that we need to write this JavaScript code in the body tag. Okay, so in the body tag I can write the JavaScript, and here, so I'll give the ID, say, so ID I'm going to give the ID as same click, and here instead of this method I can directly write in the script tag document dot get element by id. What is the id? id is click. Okay, so and dot on click equal to, I'm going to mention events. What does that mean is, once this button has clicked, okay, for this button we know whatever elements that you have in the HTML, for all the elements we'll have an object, and that object is accessed with the help of id. So what is the id? Click is the id. For, for this particular id, when it is a property or when it is an action called as on click, in that case we are going to call this message or with this function called as events. Okay, you can see the program here. What we have is document.getElement by id, the id name, and it will be followed by dot on click, and we have my button handler, and we have also a program that is based on that concept, where we have written, we have a radio button. For that radio button we are going to call the function like document dot say get element by id, id number 1, and on click we are going to call dchoice. We are going to try that. We are going to use events. I'm going to save the program. Just go to the program and just refresh it. So I have click here. Once I click I can get on click high. Okay, so now you can see the output here. So once I come to the program, I have a button called as click. Once I click on the button, I am going to call the method called as high. So this is our program. So this is how we can call the events. So there are three ways of calling the events. One is directly I can write in the method itself, like on click equal to, I can directly write the function name here, or if you want to call a method like alert, you can directly write alert here itself. So that is, it is going to call the alert directly from this on click event. And the second or the third way is, so the script should be written in the body tag, and we are going to use the id of that tag or the element, and for that id we'll have a property called as on click property, and that property will be followed by the function name. So once a click happens on that particular element, we are going to execute this function called as events. So this is our program. So try to try these programs with your, if you have laptops, so that you can understand better about how events are executed by using JavaScript. So I'll stop this session here. In the next session we are going to see other programs. Thank you.